Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something that honestly feels like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's becoming real very, very quickly. We're talking about brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, and specifically, we're going to unpack the work of Neuralink, Elon Musk's company. It's groundbreaking for sure, but also, well, pretty controversial sometimes.
Definitely raises a lot of questions.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to sift through quite a stack of sources, actually, scientific papers, news reports, ethical analyses to really get a handle on what this tech is, what it might do, and maybe some of the bigger questions it throws up.
Questions about the future, privacy.
Exactly. Even what it means to be human, potentially. So think of this as your shortcut to getting up to speed on a really, mind-bending topic.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. A brain-computer interface, BCI. What are we actually talking about?
Well, at its core, it's basically a system that creates a direct communication pathway. Right between the brain, your brain activity, and an external device like a computer.
A direct link. So decoding brain signals.
Precisely. It reads the brain's electrical or metabolic activity using sensors. Then algorithms interpret those signals, figuring out the user's intention, essentially, and translate that into commands for a machine.
And there are different ways to do that reading part, right?
Yes. Broadly, two main approaches. You've got non-invasive methods like EEG, that's electroencephalography. Think skull caps with sensors on the outside, no surgery needed.
Okay.
And then you have invasive methods. These require surgery to place electrodes directly onto or into the brain tissue itself.
And that's where Neuralink comes in, focusing on the invasive side.
Exactly. Their main device is called the Link. It's designed to be fully implanted, coin-sized, and importantly, cosmetically invisible once it's in.
Cosmetically invisible. Is that just marketing, or is that a big technical goal?
It's a bit of both, really. The tech itself is impressive. They use these incredibly thin, flexible threads, just 4 to 6 micrometers thick.
Wow.
Very. And each device packs 1,024 electrodes onto those threads. Compare that to older deep brain stimulation tech, which might only read from, say, 10 electrodes. It's a huge leap in potential data capture.
So more data, more refined control, potentially.
That's the idea. But the invisibility aspect, that speaks to their bigger aim, making invasive BCIs more accessible, more acceptable, perhaps. They talk about using a surgical robot for precise implantation.
Right, I saw that. Aiming for a procedure that's, less than an hour? No general anesthesia?
Yeah, and same-day discharge. It's ambitious. The goal is to make brain surgery almost feel like an outpatient procedure. That's a massive shift.
It really is. But the sources we looked at, did they touch on the practical challenges of actually doing that safely and reliably?
Oh, absolutely. Precision, minimizing damage, long-term stability. These are huge engineering and medical challenges they're tackling. And it's under a lot of scrutiny, as you'd expect.
And their overall vision, it's not just medical, is it?
No, it's definitely dual-pronged. The immediate goal is, quote, to restore autonomy to people with unmet medical needs today. Think paralysis, blindness, neurological disorders.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the longer-term vision, the unlock human potential tomorrow part, well, that's where it gets really sci-fi. Musk talks about merging human consciousness with AI. He's even called the Link a potential backup device for your non-physical being, your digital soul.
Right. A digital soul. That's a lot to unpack. But let's stick with the today part for a moment, because the breakthroughs already happening, even outside of Neuralink, are pretty incredible. AI seems to be a huge driver here.
Absolutely. While BCI research has been going on for decades, the recent leaps in AI, especially machine learning, have really supercharged the field. We're seeing practical applications emerge much faster now, particularly for people with disabilities.
Okay, so let's get into some examples. Restoring speech, for instance. I saw studies from Stanford and UCSF.
Yes, those were remarkable. They worked with 2 women, Pat Bennett and Ann, both paralyzed and unable to speak.
How did it work?
Basically, implanted BCIs read the neural activity associated with their intended speech. Those signals were fed into advanced AI language models.
Like the ones used for chatbots, but trained on brain data.
Sort of, yeah. The AI translates those brain patterns into text on a screen or even synthesized speech. The Stanford study got down to about a 9% word error rate, decoding at 62 words per minute. That's getting close to natural conversation speed.
That's genuinely life-changing. Imagine being able to communicate again after years of silence.
It truly is profound. And it's not just speech. We're seeing AI combined with neural implants to treat brain disorders, too. Epilepsy, Parkinson's.
How does that work? Is it like overwriting faulty signals?
In a way, The systems learn to identify the specific patterns of abnormal brain activity that precede, say, a seizure or a tremor. Then, the implant can deliver targeted electrical stimulation to modulate or counteract that activity.
So the AI predicts the problem and the implant intervenes.
Exactly. Researchers at the University of Toronto are using deep learning to spot these really subtle biomarkers and trigger the stimulation at just the right moment. It raises interesting questions, though, about how the AI learns precisely when and how to intervene without causing other issues.
Yeah, that seems critical. And the potential applications go beyond those conditions.
Oh, yes. The hope is to apply similar neuromodulation techniques to chronic pain, depression, maybe even dementia, Alzheimer's, sleep disorders. It's a massive area of research.
And controlling external devices, like robotic arms.
That too. The BrainGate 2 trial used AI, specifically recurrent neural networks, which are good with sequential data like brain signals to decode intended movements.
So someone with paralysis could think about moving a cursor or a robotic limb.
And the system translates that thought into action. They achieved over 92% accuracy in decoding intended facial movements just from neural signals in one study. It allows control of computers, robotic limbs, communication devices, all through thought.
It's incredible. But a lot of this involves invasive surgery. What about non-invasive options? Are they keeping pace?
Well, they offer different capabilities, but there's progress there too. Researchers at UT Austin developed something really interesting. A non-invasive AI system they call a semantic decoder.
Semantic decoder, what does that do?
It was trained by having participants listen to hours of podcasts while inside an fMRI scanner, which measures brain activity non-invasively. The AI learned to associate patterns of brain activity with the meaning, the semantics, of the stories being heard.
Okay.
Then later, when a participant listened to a news story, or even just mentally imagined telling a story, the AI could generate a continuous stream of text reflecting the gist of their thoughts. No implants needed.
Wow, so reading the meaning of thoughts without surgery? That's huge.
It's a different approach, maybe less precise for fine motor control than invasive methods right now, but potentially much more accessible and risk-free.
Right, which brings us to the risks and the hurdles. Because as amazing as all this sounds, there are serious safety and ethical questions, especially with the invasive stuff. Neuralink's journey hasn't been smooth sailing, have it?
No, definitely not. The FDA, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, initially had safety concerns about their first human trial plans. They did eventually grant clearance, but it highlights the level of scrutiny.
And that trial, the PRIME study, what's its focus?
It's focused on safety and initial efficacy, assessing if the wireless implant allows patients with paralysis, specifically quadriplegia, due to spinal cord injury or ALS, to control external devices with their thoughts. It's expected to take about 6 years.
6 years. And the risks involved in the surgery itself.
Well, any brain surgery carries risks. Infection is one, maybe a 1–2% chance. The body's immune system might react negatively to the implant.
For dejection.
Potentially, or causing inflammation. There's also the risk, albeit small, maybe up to 3% of the surgical robot, slightly misplacing the threads, which could affect function or cause damage.
And more serious risks.
Less common, thankfully. But things like stroke or hemorrhage are possible, perhaps in the 0.51% range.
Right.
Temporary issues like speech difficulties can also occur post-surgery. And then there's the long-term biocompatibility. How does the implant hold up inside the brain over years? Does the brain tissue react negatively over time? These are ongoing questions.
And there's been another major point of concern raised in the sources, animal welfare.
Yes, that's generated a lot of negative attention for Neuralink. Animal rights groups have filed complaints, and government agencies have investigated. There are reports alleging high numbers of animal deaths, monkeys, pigs, sheep, rodents during testing, with accusations of unnecessary suffering due to rushed procedures or mismanagement.
That's obviously very serious.
It is, and it fuels the argument for prioritizing non-invasive approaches, which avoid these surgical and animal testing issues altogether. As we discussed, non-invasive BCIs are already helping people communicate or control devices without those risks.
There's also the issue of transparency, right? I saw Neuralink faced some criticism about registering their human trial.
That's right. They initially didn't register the PRIME study on clinicaltrials.gov, which is the standard practice for clinical trials in the U.S. They did eventually register it in May 2024, but the initial omission raised eyebrows about transparency and adherence to research norms.
Okay, so beyond the individual patient's safety and research ethics, what about the bigger picture, the societal impact?
That's where the conversation gets even more complex. UNESCO, the UN's educational, scientific, and cultural organization, put out a pretty strong statement. They warned that neurotechnology, broadly, threatens human rights and requires global regulation.
Threatens human rights. How so?
They're concerned about potential impacts on our fundamental sense of self. Our identity, autonomy, privacy, even our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors could potentially be influenced or monitored. They're working on developing a global ethical framework to try and guide this.
It really pushes us to ask what it means to be human if our minds are directly linked to machines. Musk's comment, "We are already a cyborg," seems less like hyperbole in this context.
Exactly. Some thinkers worry about creating post-human individuals, blurring the line between mind and machine. Could it lead to a kind of disembodied thought where knowledge becomes detached from physical experience, maybe even impacting empathy?
Or that idea of absent presence, people being physically present but mentally plugged into the tech instead of their surroundings.
That's another concern. And then there's the privacy of thought itself. This neural data is incredibly sensitive. What if it's hacked?
Right. Could someone intercept your thoughts? Or worse, manipulate them?
It sounds like dystopian fiction, but researchers have actually demonstrated vulnerabilities. For instance, certain brain waves, like the P300 wave, it's an involuntary response your brain makes when it recognizes something significant or relevant, can potentially leak information.
Leak information? Like what?
Things you might see on a screen: passwords, PIN numbers, bank details. If a malicious actor could design stimuli and monitor your P300 response via a BCI, they might be able to extract that sensitive data without you consciously revealing anything. It's quite chilling when you think about it.
Definitely. And the sources mention memory manipulation, too.
Yeah, that's looking further ahead. But the idea is, if we deeply understand how memories are formed and stored, could future BCIs record, replay, edit, or even implant memories? The potential for abuse there is enormous manipulation, altering history.
It's mind-boggling. And what about societal inequality? If these enhancements become available, will everyone have access?
That's a huge question. A Pew Research survey found a majority of U.S. adults think people would feel pressured to get implants if they became widespread. Could we see a divide between the enhanced and the unenhanced, affecting jobs, social standing?
Like a new kind of digital divide, but inside our heads.
Potentially. And related to that is cybersecurity. We've already seen hacks of medical devices like pacemakers. Imagine the stakes with a brain implant.
You mentioned Marie Moe hacking her own pacemaker.
Yes, she's a security researcher who did exactly that to highlight the vulnerabilities. If someone could remotely access or alter the function of a BCI, the potential for harm is immense.
And finally, there's the military angle.
Right. BCIs are being explored for military uses. Things like silent talk, direct brain-to-brain communication for soldiers, or enhancing perception, controlling drones or other machinery with thought.
Which creates a dilemma, doesn't it? The potential common good of enhanced security versus individual rights, consent, privacy, psychological impact.
It's a classic ethical tightrope. How do you balance potential societal benefits with the profound risks to individual autonomy and well-being?
So given all these risks, medical, ethical, societal, security, what's being done to safeguard the future, how do we protect this incredibly sensitive neural data?
Well, the technical strategies involve things you'd expect, but amplified. Robust encryption is critical for any data transmitted or stored. Strict access controls may be multi-factor authentication even for brain data access. Regular security audits of the devices and systems are essential.
It can't just be bolt-on security after the fact.
Absolutely not. It needs to be baked in from the design phase. And user awareness is key too. People need to understand the risks and how to manage their device securely. It requires a new level of collaboration between healthcare providers and cybersecurity experts.
And the law, is it keeping up?
It's trying. The EU's AI Act has provisions that could apply, like prohibiting AI systems that infer emotions in workplaces or schools, or predict criminal behavior based on profiling things BCIs might enable.
So AI regulations might cover some BCI applications.
Potentially, yes, especially as AI is so integral to interpreting the brain data. And data protection laws like the GDPR in Europe already classify health data, including brain data, as highly sensitive, requiring strong protections.
Are there laws specifically about neuro rights?
We're starting to see them emerge. Some U.S. states like Colorado and California and countries like Chile and Spain are pioneering legislation aimed at protecting mental integrity, cognitive liberty, and the privacy of neural data specifically.
But is there a consistent global framework yet?
Not really. That's the challenge. We have some sector-specific rules, like medical device regulations and these emerging neural rights laws, but no comprehensive, globally agreed-upon legal framework specifically for neurotechnologies. This creates gaps and potential conflicts. There's a real push for international principles to ensure these powerful technologies are developed and used responsibly.
We've definitely taken a deep dive today, from the incredible potential of BCIs for restoring function, pushed forward by companies like Neuralink, to these profound ethical and safety challenges.
It's a field defined by that duality, isn't it? Immense promise, immense risk. The path forward really demands cautious optimism, absolutely rigorous testing, full transparency from researchers and companies, and continuous oversight. Strong ethical guidelines aren't just nice to have, they're essential.
It feels like we're not just talking about a new gadget, we're potentially defining a major aspect of society for this century.
I think that's right. It touches on fundamental aspects of who we are and how we interact with the world and each other.
Which leaves us with maybe the biggest question. As this technology advances, what does autonomy or free will even mean if our innermost thoughts could potentially be accessed, influenced, maybe even subtly guided by technology, even if the stated goal is for the common good?